In the year 399 BC, a 70-year-old man stood before a jury of 500 Athenian citizens. He had been charged with impiety and corrupting the youth. The penalty, if found guilty, could be death. The man was Socrates. And when he was given the chance to defend himself, and not just his actions, but his entire way of life, he said something that stopped the room. He said he would not stop asking questions. He would not stop examining himself and others. Even if they let him go free, even if they spared his life on the condition that he stay silent, he refused. And then he said this: the unexamined life is not worth living. He was sentenced to death, and he accepted it. Now, I want you to hold that image for a moment. A man choosing to die rather than stop asking questions. What kind of questions could possibly be worth dying for? That is what we are going to explore today. Because that sentence, the unexamined life is not worth living, is not a decoration. It is not a quote for an Instagram post. It is a claim about the most fundamental thing there is. What makes a human life meaningful at all? And I think most of us, if we are honest, are not living it. First, let's clear something up. When Socrates talked about the examined life, he did not mean what we might assume. He was not talking about therapy. He was not talking about journaling or meditation or self-help routines or any of the modern frameworks we reach for when we want to understand ourselves better. Those things can be part of it. But they are not the core of what he meant. For Socrates, examining your life meant something very specific, questioning your beliefs, your values, and your assumptions about what is good, what is right, and what is worth pursuing. He walked through the streets of Athens and asked everyone he met, politicians, poets, craftsmen, generals, what is virtue? What is justice? What is courage? Defendants? And almost without exception, the people he asked discovered something unsettling. They didn't actually know. They had opinions. They had habits. They had socially accepted answers. But when he really pressed, those answers crumbled. And here is what Socrates believed. A person who has never examined what they believe about the good life will, by default, live someone else's version of it. They will chase wealth because everyone around them chases wealth. They will avoid discomfort because comfort is what their culture values. They will measure their life by metrics they never chose and never questioned. And at the end of all of that, at the end of a life that was busy and productive and largely successful by outside measures, they may find that they were never actually present for it. They were never the author of it, they were just executing a script. So why did Socrates choose death over silence? This is the part of the story that tends to make modern people uncomfortable. And it should. Because his reasoning is radical. Socrates believed that his purpose in life, his actual purpose, the thing he was here to do, was to serve as a kind of philosophical gadfly. His word, not mine, like a fly that lands on a horse and keeps it from falling into a comfortable stupor. He believed Athens was that horse. Comfortable, complacent, going through the motions of political and civic life without ever examining whether any of it was actually good. And he believed the gods had assigned him the task of waking it up. If he stopped, if he stayed alive by agreeing to be quiet, he wouldn't be preserving his life. He would be abandoning it. He would be betraying the one thing that made his life meaningful. And to Socrates, a life without that meaning was not a life worth living. So he drank the hemlock. Now, I am not suggesting any of us need to be that dramatic about it, but I want you to feel the weight of that conviction. A conviction so deep that death was preferable to its betrayal. Most of us have never had a conviction that strong about anything. And I think part of the reason for that is that we have never examined what we actually believe with enough honesty to discover what we would truly refuse to give up. The examined life asks you to find that. So what does the examined life look like in practice, not in 399 BC Athens, not as a professional philosopher, but right now in the life you are actually living? Over years of reading and applying philosophy, I have distilled it into 4 questions. Not the only 4 questions, but the 4 that I come back to again and again. The ones that actually cut. Question 1. What am I assuming to be true that I have never actually tested? This is the Socratic core. We all carry inherited beliefs about what success looks like, about what we deserve, about what other people owe us, about what kind of person we are. Most of these were given to us before we were old enough to evaluate them. The examined life asks you to put them on trial, not to destroy them. Some of them will hold up beautifully under scrutiny. But to stop granting them automatic authority. Question 2. Am I pursuing what I actually want or what I think I should want? This one is harder than it looks, because the should wants are loud. They come dressed as ambition, as responsibility, as virtue. They sound like you, but they are not always you. Aristotle taught that the good life, eudaimonia, flourishing, comes from living in accordance with your deepest nature, not performing a version of yourself that other people approve of. The examined life requires you to tell the difference. Question 3, how am I spending my attention, and does that match what I say I value? The Stoics were obsessed with this. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals he never intended anyone to read, about the danger of allowing the mind to drift, of letting days pass without intention. Here's a simple and devastating test. Take the last 7 days of your life and reconstruct as honestly as you can where your attention went, not where you planned for it to go, where it actually went. Then look at your stated values. How close is the match? For most of us, the gap is uncomfortable. Question 4. Who am I becoming? And is that who I want to be? This is the Aristotelian question. Character is not a fixed thing. It is built daily by the choices we make and the habits we reinforce. The person you will be in 10 years is being constructed right now in the decisions you are making today. The examined life means paying attention to that construction project. It means noticing when you are drifting away from the person you want to be and making the correction early before the drift becomes the direction. There's a Greek word the Stoics use for this practice, prosoche. It is usually translated as self-attention or watchfulness, and nobody practiced it more seriously than Marcus Aurelius. Here was a man who was by any measure one of the most powerful people who had ever lived, emperor of Rome, commander of armies, master of an empire that stretched across most of the known world. And every morning he sat alone and wrote in his journal, not for an audience, not for posterity, for himself, to examine his own thoughts, his own impulses, his own failures from the day before. He wrote things like, confine yourself to the present. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. He was not writing these for us. He was writing them as reminders to himself. Because even with all his power, all his resources, all his philosophical training, he still had to fight every single day to stay awake to his own life. That is what prosoche looks like. Not a grand gesture, not a yearly retreat or a dramatic decision. It is a daily, quiet, unglamorous act of paying attention to yourself. It is noticing when you are reacting instead of responding. It is catching the thought before it becomes a word you regret. It is pausing before a decision to ask, is this consistent with who I want to be? Small moments, every day, that is the examined life. I want to give you something practical to walk away with today. Not a to-do list, this is philosophy, not productivity, but a way of starting. The examined life does not require an hour of journaling every morning. It does not require that you read every philosophy book ever written. It does not require that you overhaul your entire existence starting tomorrow. It requires one thing, a pause. A moment, even 60 seconds. Once a day where you turn your attention inward and ask one of the 4 questions. Any one of them. What did I assume today that I should question? Was I pursuing what I actually want or what I think I should want? Where did my attention go today? And was that intentional? Who am I becoming? And am I at peace with that? You do not need to answer perfectly. Socrates himself claimed he knew nothing. The point is not the answer. The point is the asking. Because the moment you start asking, seriously asking, honestly asking, something changes. You stop being a passive passenger in your own life. You become, in some small but real way, its author. And that is what Socrates was pointing at, not a set of conclusions. A way of being. An orientation toward your own existence that refuses to let the days dissolve into habit without witness. The examined life is not about having all the answers. It is about refusing to stop asking the questions. Socrates died for this idea. Not because he was reckless or dramatic, but because he understood something that is easy to forget when life is full and busy and moving fast. A life that is not examined is a life that is not truly inhabited. You can live in a house for 30 years and never really be home. The examined life is the decision to be home. Next week, we go deep into Stoicism, specifically the one idea at the heart of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca that modern psychology has now confirmed to be true. You're not going to want to miss it. If this episode gave you something to sit with, share it with one person who needs it, not the whole internet. Just one person. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you next week. Think about that.